At INdigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at INdigital.net.
Rapid Deploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why, since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by INdigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and as always, there is a lot going on. Also, this is an exclusive INdigital episode. We are marching closer and closer to Dare to Be Great 3. That's going to be June 7th through the 10th, and there are amazing speakers that are going to be there. We've got, I think, 26 speakers, conference speakers, and then that's not counting all of the industry partners that are going to be there as well. So, I mean, we're looking at almost 40 speakers that are going to be just dishing out some amazing continuing education for all of you. And don't forget that the conference is fully free, and it's unlimited viewing and registration. So even if you don't register to attend live, make sure to register anyway, because you will still be able to go back as many times as you want and watch on demand on your time. And those will be there throughout the rest of the time that I have my account with Crowdcast, which is the platform that I do all of these virtual events, and I don't plan on taking them down anytime soon. So they are always going to be there for you to go back. To date, for those first 2 Dare to Be Great conferences, it's just over 9,000 attendees from all over the world who either watched live or have gone back to watch on demand. So number 3 is going to add that much more people, and it's one that you don't want to miss. It's truly a virtual event that is done by dispatch for dispatch. So again, make sure to check it out, and shout outs to our diamond sponsors, INdigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Rapid SOS. Thank you all so very much. We wouldn't be able to put on this free event if it wasn't for your support and everything that you do for 911. So thank you so very much, and especially for all of you who are within the trenches of 911, members of the Thin Gold Line and I Am 911. Thank you for the job that you do. So again, make sure to check out Dare to Be Great 3, June 7th through the 10th, 2021. And registration is up now. You can go, you can find us through Crowdcast or on social media, and as well as withinthetrenches.net, and check it out there. So there are more videos that are going to be coming out for patrons. Shout out to patrons for everything. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you, especially those who watch, listen, share, and support. I was just showing a little piece of some singing badly in my car to my next guest for today, and we were cracking up. It was a lot of fun. And there's, again, more to come. So make sure to check that out. You can check us out on patreon.com/WTT podcast. My guest today is a good friend, and I'm excited to have her on, especially because almost every time that I've spoken to her, I've told her one of these days I'm going to get you on the podcast, and we're gonna share your story. And it was always, oh yeah, maybe someday. It's finally happening, and I am excited. This is going to be good. My guest today is Joni Harvey, and she's the Michigan State 911 Administrator.
Thanks, Ricardo. Hi, it's good to see you. Yes, I'm finally here. And a little plug-in for your singing badly in the car. He wasn't kidding. If you have not seen that, I told him I'm saving it as like a quick link, because when you need a quick moment to just laugh so hard you get some tears in your eyes, save it, watch it. It's hilarious. You can watch it for 10 seconds or 10 minutes. It's amazing. So thank you for that, Ricardo. And a warm welcome.
Oh, yes, you are very welcome. You should, okay, really quick, before we get into your story, I have to tell you that when I'm driving down the road, and this is like on a back road where I know there's not a lot of traffic or anything, and the cars that have passed me, I'm sure they're wondering, what the heck is this fool doing? Because I'm in there like doing all these, stupid moves and stuff, and looking into the camera to try to make it as hilarious as possible. And if they were in there with me, I'm sure their ears would be like bleeding, because I have an okay voice, but not when I'm singing.
No way. It was amazing. And I'll tell you, here's a little secret that I'll share with you and the thousands of people that are now listening. But when you work in 911, from when you were in there, Ricardo, you get tons of patrol information, a lot of angry drivers out there. So when I'm driving down the road, I make it a point when I am jamming to a good song. I don't care if I'm on the expressway, if I'm stopped at a stoplight, I do all that, and I'll be doing the fun dancing and everything else, because how can somebody be mad at you or stay mad when they look over and they see somebody who's just having a great time jamming, going down the road? It'll just bring a laugh to somebody. I do it all the time. So do it on the expressway, man. Do it at the stoplight in town. Don't save it just for the back road people. Get it done. Share that.
There have been a couple times where I've not recording a video or anything, but just in general been jamming out to something, and I'll pull up to a light, and I'll look at the person as as I start singing. They're like, make a face.
That's hilarious. My kids record me doing it all the time, and then I yell at them for it because I don't know they're recording me. They send it to me later, but little do they know, I do it I don't do it just to embarrass them. I do it because it's fun. So,
of course.
Yeah.
So now I need to reach out and see if I can find one of your videos.
No, you do not. You do just save it for the imaginative. We'll just watch you. Just pretend, I'm sure that being the computer guy you are, you could just stick my face on one of yours, and we'll call it good.
Now that would even
dab of a Ricardo.
Yeah.
In the car.
That would be even more funny to have to superimpose your face on mine while I'm dancing or something. Oh man, that is excellent. Now, the last time we saw each other was what? It was over a year ago, maybe now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was at the 911 Goes to Washington.
Yep, 2020. I had been in this position a whole, 3 weeks maybe.
Only that much, really?
Yeah. I just started in this position at the very, very end of January 2020. Yeah.
That's interesting, because the year before that, though, you were still at your previous position.
Yep.
And then, because I remember when we all saw each other the next year, and you had said the position that you were in now, I thought a lot has happened since I've seen you.
Yes, it did. You probably thought it was, imagine at the time within the center still, and I probably moved again inside the walls. But no, I actually left my home and came to my new home. My other home. It's my other home. I can't say I have a new home. It's my other home.
There you go. Yeah,
My
exactly.
911 center will always be my home.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it was always good to see you and everyone else out of Michigan there. Because there was it's hard to explain sometimes the 911 Goes to Washington conference, because there's so much. And for those who are watching and listening, that's the one that the NINA puts on, the National Emergency Number Association. And there's so many different conversations that are going on. There's so many things that are happening, and they have their virtual one that's coming up here pretty soon, which I'm excited for as well. But it's hard to top the in-person experience of that, because there's so much, right, that you're doing. You're going to speak to your representatives, talking to them about different 911 initiatives. Right now, NG 911, there's a bill and legislation that's going out there right now. So there's so many different things. Before we get into your story here, just to kind of talk on this really quick, what has that experience been for you, from the time that you were in the center, but also the last year that we saw each other, now in this new position? There was so much that you were learning. Did some of that, kind of give some inspiration to switch over as well to where you're at now?
Absolutely. So, I mean, when you look at 911 Goes to Washington, it's really not so much focused on the operational side. When you're in the dispatch center, that's what we really focus on, is the day-to-day operations. We don't deal with the legislative types of issues unless we have to, or there's someone else who does that, right? So 911 Goes to Washington, it really taps into the expertise of those who are familiar with and comfortable with talking about the legislative issues and needs of 911 for the industry across the country, not just in Michigan. So it's really a fantastic experience, definitely a huge learning experience. It was the most different. The first year I went was in 2019, and I got to meet with the legislators. I was so nervous. I really felt uneducated and just, the least smart person in the room, but everybody feels like that. So for anyone who's intimidated about the idea of going, don't be. You have peers, you have support. There's people who have been there for several years, and even if you're a first timer, there's tons of those too. So there's a position for everybody to go and learn something. 2021 was really interesting for me because I had that little bit of experience from the year before, but I was actually considered one of the senior people that were going because I had gone one other year, so it was different. And then being in the new position, it puts me in a different light on how I represent things. So in 2020, for example, when I went being in the PSAP, I could speak of what was best for, Livingston County or Michigan from that perspective in the PSAP. Now, when I go, it really has to be what's best for the 911 industry as a whole for the state of Michigan. So it's not just what our county prefers, it's what's really best for all of the industry. So I have to be really careful about that. And, in past experiences, I mean, for sure, everything that I do at this level has built off of past experiences I have had in this industry. I would not be here without that.
Thinking back to the time that you were saying that it was your first time there, I think that's when we were all at dinner and we were introducing each other and stuff. And I said, I know who you are. Like, I remember you from a training class like years ago when we were both in dispatch. And it's interesting, you meet people and stuff, and then years later, there you are again. And it was funny because you were kind of shocked a little bit.
Like, you, and I'm like, I think I know him. I think that's the Ricardo I know. So I'm like, I hope he doesn't catch me staring at him awkwardly. But so I wasn't sure, and I was too shy. I wouldn't have said, hey, didn't we go to training? But so I was glad you said something, because it's been, just catching up ever since. And for those of you who don't know, I had the pleasure of starting in my 911 career around the same time Ricardo did. And it was really interesting. We kind of grew up together. So in the 911 sense, and just kind of coming back full circle here is really cool.
Yeah, it was excellent. Talk about all those times and everything, and it was like, yeah, I'm Ricardo. I'm that one guy. I'm the dude from Allegan.
You're like Cher or Madonna. You have to wonder. You're the one name wonder of 911.
Like, who are you, Seal?
You
Oh man, yeah,
totally dated yourself with Seal. You just did
yeah. The one name, right?
that. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that the whole experience, it, like I said, it's hard to explain a lot of it sometimes because there's just the networking alone, there's a lot of stuff that you learn, but the networking and also learning from others, especially, you know, after everything that's going on, and everyone meets up kind of in the lobby area, whether we're getting dinner or drinks or whatever, just talking about 911 and how everyone does it differently, in their states, but we're learning from each other and then applying some of those different real world examples in specific situations. So it's a pretty good one. I'm excited to see what they do virtually, but I'm also excited to see everyone when everything is back in person, to be able to do it that way. So let's go back in time a little bit. Let's jump in our DeLorean and hit 88. I want to know more about you because we've had some conversations, but for the audience here, I want to hear, how did you get into dispatching to begin with?
Well, so I was first introduced to dispatch through the fire service. Long story short, we had a medical emergency with my son. We had to call for EMS. Fire showed up on the scene to treat him until the paramedics arrived. And, I had no idea that fire departments did that. They were put out fires, so we got to talking with the responders on the scene afterwards, and we kept in contact. They were actually neighbors. We didn't even know. And so I got on a volunteer paid on call fire service. So part of that, but the training, it doesn't matter, at least at this fire department, it doesn't matter if you're paid on call or if you're full time. You still have to go through Michigan's Fire 1 and Fire 2 program to be certified. So part of that program is going to visit your local dispatch center and getting to know your telecommunicators, figuring out how things work. And I'll be honest with you, I was blown away. I mean, just in the short time I had been in the fire academy, and you're cool because we got to carry around our minuters, and we just assumed if you didn't hear a dispatch going out, then they were in there just doing nothing, so they must not be busy. So how hard can that be, right?
Yeah.
And then you get in there and you're just like, wow, I don't even know how you have time to dispatch the calls from everything else that you have going on. You don't know that they're saying 3 words to you, unkeying, saying a sentence to the person on the phone, yelling across the room to their partner, and then finishing their sentence on the air. You don't hear all of that because you don't see it. So when they say that they are the unseen heroes, it's the truth. And I got really interested, I'll be honest with you, because it was a challenge. Somebody on the fire service had applied for a position, and I'm thinking, when I went through and did my academy visit, they talked about how difficult it is to get in. There's this test that you have to pass, and it's very hard to pass the test. And only, I think they said 20% of the people that apply actually pass. And then there's this interview process, and it takes like 6 months to get in. And this is how it was back then, and Ricardo, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was painful back then to get hired in a dispatch. But I thought, geez, I wonder if I can pass that test. I wonder if I could just pass the test. So initially, that's really all I was trying to do, to see if I could pass this test, because this other person on the fire service said they passed it. So I'm like, well, of course I should be able to pass it, right? So I was shocked to find out I passed the test, and then lo and behold, I was actually granted an interview, and I'm like, well, there's no way they're going to hire me, but what harm will it do, to go in and have an interview? And my full-time job was doing data entry for a window blinds company back then. So I went in for the interview, and I got hired. And so it wasn't this, it kind of all ties back to this experience that my son had when he was little, but it's strange how the events played out, especially to think of where I ended up today, just blows my mind. But yeah, it was kind of an accident how I ended up getting involved in 911.
Whoa. Do you ever, and especially now in the position that you're in, do you ever sit back and think, what if that incident had not happened with your son? Like, where would you be? Do you think eventually you might have been in public safety, or was it just simply that moment that piqued your interest, fire service, then, doing, hearing about the test and, kind of in the competitive, aspect of it in your head, thinking, no, like you said, I want to try this. I just want to see if I can pass it. And then you do. Like, have you ever done that? Have you thought back, but in the position that you're at now, what would have happened?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like anybody who's in this position knows, we say it all the time, it takes a special kind of person, but that's reality. It takes a very special kind of person to even enter into this field, and then to endure it is a completely, next level of special kind of person, right? So the feeling that I've wanted to do something more and I wanted to do something special has always existed. I don't know how I would have. I think that everybody has a moment, or a lot of people, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people have just a moment or a series of moments that leads to some sort of calling, if you will. So I think that was mine. If that had not happened, I don't know. I think at some point, I feel like things happen for a reason. So I think if I didn't bite on that event, that there may have been another one that probably happened down the road, that this is still where I would have ended up, because it is where I belong. I think, like a lot of 911 people, once we get into the field, we realize, well, geez, I should have been an investigator, and I should have been, an attorney, and I should have been in this and that, because we wear so many hats. But at the end of the day, this was what was meant for me. Whether I can do more, because even in the position I'm in, I'm still wanting, what else can I do? How can I do more? That's all. That's just a part of who I am. But I think that's a lot of our telecommunicators are that way.
Do you remember what was part of that test that you had taken that was so hard that people, like, only 20% were passing it?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I'm not a test person. There's people out there that have photographic memories and all of that and do great on tests. I will be honest with you, that is not me. I hate tests. I don't do well on them. Mm-hmm. But back then, it was the standard civil service test. So it didn't matter what portion of county government that you were applying for. They brought you in, and there's 150 people in the room, and they all took the same exact test. So it wasn't even geared towards any specific industry or discipline, if you will. So it was just, I mean, tests for me are hard anyways. I'll tell everybody I got a 76%. So for those of you who are not good test takers, hang in there. There's still future for you. There's things you can do. Tests aren't everything.
Well, and so I ask because I remember when I had applied over at Allegan, I had to take a test as well, and it was like 100 or so question test, and I had to take it within a certain amount of time, and and of course I could only miss so much, but it was mostly and it was public safety related, but it was mostly common sense. And I missed one. And still to this day, I'm pissed about it because I think about that question, and it was because I second guessed myself, and I thought, no, it probably can't be that answer. So I switched my answer, and I remember waiting there and waiting and waiting and waiting, and they're like, okay, here's your results, and I looked at it and I thought, crap, I knew it. Like, I knew it was that one. Why didn't I go with my gut? So there was that. I think that was actually the only test. The center that I had gone to apply to around the same time as Allegan, there was about 30 or so people in a room together. And this room, it was pretty open, so it was very like echoey and such in there. So the acoustics weren't that great, but it also played to the advantage of their test that they were doing, because what the test was was it was radio traffic that they were going to play on the PA system. So everybody in the room had a piece of paper, just scratch piece of paper and a pencil, and we had to write down what we thought the officer and dispatch were talking about.
Mhm.
And that's how they were narrowing down from 30 to like 10, I believe it was. So that was a test there, and then they had like a typing test, and so there were different things. But in Allegan, it was just that written one, and the background. It's different now, but that's how it was back then.
Yeah, we didn't. I can't remember. I'm sure that we did a typing test. I don't remember that, but what I remember most about that is that the supervisor for the 911 center at the time stood in front of this giant room full of people, and she had this little boom box with a cassette player, and she played this cassette tape and held the microphone down to it, and it gave like an incident of a mock caller, and we didn't have anything with, we couldn't have any pencil or paper or anything with us. Well, so then when the test came, that was before the test. When the test actually started, it was like halfway through, then it started asking you questions to see what you could recall from that recording she had played a half an hour ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. What was the license plate? What was the color of the neighbor's friend's car? It was just, I'm like, what? How do you even expect people to remember that? And then it would ask us, there's different ways to spell bail. So in this sentence, how would you spell bail? Bale of hay or bail out of jail. It was just strange.
Oh man. So that's interesting right there as well, because so when I very first started my dispatching career back in Florida, it was during my my 40-hour beginners dispatcher course. We had a guy in there who was training and for the day, and was just teaching us all different types of things to kind of understand our callers and their state of mind, and how when people call in, a lot of times the description is not right because people see what they want to see, and sometimes they kind of make it up, in their head of what it might be what they saw. So he did a test with us, which of course we didn't know it was while it was happening or anything. So there was a knock at the door. This guy comes in and he hands our instructor something. And it was funny because we're all immediately watching this person as he walks in and hands whatever to the instructor. But instead of turning around, going right back to the door, he goes all the way around the classroom, comes up in back of us, just walking regular, and just kind of looking at people, saying hello, and then leaves. And I remember thinking, why did you do that? Like there's got to be something to that. So then the instructor continues talking, and then he goes, oh, by the way, the gentleman who was in here, what was he wearing? And then we all were looking around at each other and, we're raising our hands and saying what we thought the person was wearing. And of course we were all wrong. And but it played to what he was talking about with callers, on how people, you see something, but a little time pass, or at a heightened level, emergency or whatever's going on, you start to make things up sometimes. So what the guy had handed him was a Polaroid of him. They took a picture of him, of everything he was wearing. And
Wow.
so he turns around and he turns the picture around. He goes, this is the gentleman who walked in. This is what he was wearing. And then he gave description, and we're all like, oh.
Were you even close? Do you remember?
No, I think maybe I got the hair color, but which was a complete guess as well. But otherwise, we were all wrong.
That is crazy. That's crazy how that it does. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting test and stuff. It was good. It's one that I'll never forget. Now, for you, when you passed the test,
I did.
you end up going to the interview and you get hired, which
Yep.
is even more. So when you went into training, what was that like for you in the beginning? Was there ever a point where it got a little overwhelming, or it was not exactly what you expected, but you were continuing on because you kind of caught the bug there?
Every day was like that. Every day was overwhelming, and every day, and I don't know how many telecommunicators feel like this, but there's no shame in admitting. My daughter's in telecommunications now, and she's a 911 telecommunicator, and I tell her all the time, I cried every day when I went home for over a year. I mean, on good days, I cried because I left unscathed, right? And on bad days, I cried because I'm thinking, what am I doing here? How did I end up here? You know, I can't do this. And it's hard because they tell you, you know, you can't talk about your calls. You can't talk about things. And the culture was a lot different back then than I think it is now. And, you know, people weren't necessarily friendly when you got hired in. You'd have a couple of them, but it just wasn't how it was done. You know, the people that endured and lasted, and your senior dispatchers, you know, as we refer to them, they would get tired of making new friends and have them leaving in a week or a month or 6 months. So when it's kind of traumatic for a new hire coming in to learn everything, it also can be as difficult for the senior folks because they make these bonds and the connections, and they're the ones that have to keep doing it over and over and over and feel, you know, they just feel a loss, and that gets hard for them. So some of them just stop doing it when you're new. So when they tell you that you can't talk about your calls with anybody and you're not friends with anybody at work, you know, what are you supposed to do? You know, just sit there and overcome. You figure out ways to cope. And I think that our sense of humor obviously plays into that, but it can also only do so much. You know, you have to find other ways. So it was very difficult. I cried, every day for about a year. And just one day, things clicked with me. I mean, geography was my biggest issue. I worked where I lived, and I still was terrible at it. You know, so, but just one day, it just clicked for me. So for any of those new hires out there that really feel like, you know, they're being told by their trainers and they're being told by their supervisors, hey, just give it a little more time. It's going to click for you. If it's something that you actually want to do and stick with, give it a little more time. It probably will click for you. There's no guarantee for everybody. Again, we'll go back to that special kind of talent. It doesn't mean that they're not good people applying for these positions, but it just, for me, something clicked and I stuck with it.
You know, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you in that sense where when I was in training, nobody talked to me either. And it was weird because me going in that way. So I had 3.5 years of experience already from the center that the small police department that I had started at. You know, I built those relationships there, and it was like family, right? So when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan and I started working and training at Allegan County, I had 3 different trainers, and you know, there were issues sometimes where, you know, one trainer was like, well, you know, do it this way, and then if you're doing it that way with a different trainer, then you might get marked down because you're not doing it the same way that you were doing it before, and then you try to think of it your own way to make it faster, and where you think that is the right thing to do, sometimes with whoever you're with, it might not be. So there was, like, for me, there was an issue there, but also at the same time, nobody is talking or anything. And I'm comparing now from the small police department to now the central dispatch and thinking, well, since there's way more of us, shouldn't we be working like a team? Like, how come nobody is talking to me? And I remember one of the girls that was there was actually someone that I grew up with and went to high school with and everything. And it was just weird that we would end up working together at the center in 911. And I finally asked her, because even she wasn't talking to me. And I said, what is going on here? I said, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I feel like I want to quit. And I almost did, because of that environment where, you know, we weren't even talking or anything. And I said to her, it's like, aren't we supposed to be a team? And I just don't understand this. So can you explain it? And she goes, it's just the way they do it. Once you get to the shadow phase, that last phase, that's when we all work like a team. And I said, something should change though. Shouldn't we be kind of practicing that to begin with? And she goes, it's just the way that they're doing it right now. And just stick with it. Just please stick with it. It'll be all right. You're doing good. Keep going. And I did stick with it. But I don't know. Had I not spoken to her, things might have been different. But it was still something that I loved and I wanted to do. So I was going to stick it out either way. It was just hard for me though as well. You know, just kind of like you, where it was different because I thought we were supposed to be a team.
Yeah, and they did, and and they were a great team. And at the end of the day, when stuff hit the fan, like they were on it, and
Right.
everything was getting done. But it was just an interesting dynamic. And again, it was just that was their coping mechanism. That was the way that they dealt with the continued loss of the turnover.
Mhm.
So it was hard not to take it personally as a new hire. And it was even more important when I became that senior to not let our new hires feel like that, so there's a culture change that had to happen. And for the most part, I feel like it has industry wide. It's definitely turned some corners because we know how lucky we are to have those telecommunicators there. It just was the more of, hey, after work and, to talk about things that bothered you. I was very shy.
Mhm.
So even if somebody probably would have wanted to talk to me, I just don't know that I would have taken advantage of it at the time. I know people that know me now don't ever believe me when I say that was very shy, but I really, really was. I bet you I didn't say more than 3 or 4 words the first year I was there. It's just how I was. So if those opportunities were there, to be honest, I didn't even try to attempt to get any of that from them. But I was lucky. There's a lot of people that I worked with that aren't in the industry anymore. They've gotten out. But there's still those ones that are still there that were there when I got hired, and I just commend them. I commend everybody who sticks it out. The new ones, they need to stick with it. And it's hard to say that because we don't want to put people through things that cause them pain or trauma if it's really not a good fit for them either, So it's really got to be a personal decision. I think that's got to be first and foremost is what's best for you and your family and your own health. And then to see what are your abilities from there. So stick with it for those of you that are just having those bad days over and over and you're just not sure. If your coworkers are telling you to hang in there and it's something you want to do, please just hang in there. They're not lying to you. There will be some light at the end of the tunnel. It will click for you.
For sure. Do you remember like your first call or any of those earlier calls in your career?
I remember it's so weird and very random, the things that I remember. I don't remember my first call. I remember my first CPR call that I was on my own for as a call taker. I was done with Shadow. And it was probably my second or third day off of that training. And I had a woman who had called because her infant wasn't breathing. And I remember hearing the brother or sister in the background. They were so little, it was a toddler, so I really couldn't tell. But yelling for the baby to wake up and saying, why isn't my brother waking up? And the mom's trying to, I'm trying to work with the mom to give CPR to the infant when the siblings in the background and she's trying to, deal with that. And I will never forget that. I will never forget what an amazing caller she was, how my heart felt, because I had little ones at the time when I started. They weren't infants, but I had little ones. And just how my heart hurt for that toddler, that baby in the background and that mom, in the moment. And it's the only time in my career that I can ever remember getting contacted from a caller afterwards. It was maybe 3 or 4 days later, she had contacted me and the baby didn't make it. And I knew that day, but she did give me some background that there was a lot of medical issues that had been going on, but she really wanted to thank me for my help. And I thought, wow, in the back of my mind, when I was thinking I couldn't do this, it wasn't the successful ending that I would have wanted, of course, but she still felt that I was there for her and that I supported her and that I was the light that she had till responders got on scene. And that meant something to her. So for our telecommunicators out there that really struggle with those endings that just don't happen the way we want them to, don't think your efforts are for nothing, because that's absolutely the most incorrect thing that you could ever think. They mean something and they help people. So just remember that. But I do remember that. I remember some funny things too, but But that's probably the one that sticks with me the most.
You know, it's rare, isn't it, when you get even a thank you sometimes. And a lot of times with this job, you know, we're there and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we don't want a thank you every single time. But, you know, when you do get one of those rare moments when someone thanks you, it's a good feeling. Well, on top of that, though, for this situation specifically, you know, this is a few days later,
Yeah.
and you know, you knew the outcome already. And a lot of times in this profession, we don't get closure. And although you knew what happened, and you know, people would say or think, you know, you got the closure right away. I'm guessing though, hearing from this mom added more to that. And I mean, that's kind of why it sticks with you as well, in a way, right? Because you know, you don't get these thank yous, but for this, for to have her, you know, reach out to you later, I mean, that just it has to, it's everything, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it has stuck with me all these years. And I keep saying, I think that things happen for a reason. And for me to get that from someone who just lost their baby, you know, I didn't save your baby. That's all that
Mhm.
I could have running through my head. And that little bit of reach out from her was really enough to help save me and what I was going through at the time, to keep me going and saying, yes, I can do this, because there's a reason that we have to do these. And there's a reason that, you know, we can't control everything, right? Some of these outcomes are completely out of our hands, but there is a different service that we're providing to those callers and those families in those moments. And we need to remember that too. So it's not only about saving actual lives, but it's about helping the people who are trying to save those lives, right? We've got a lot of purposes, not just a single.
Yeah, exactly. And I I too am a firm believer that things happen for a reason, and that some of the things that we've gone through, you know, in the past, anything in our experience, if there's a similar call, like a similar situation, um, you know, we would be able to handle the caller a lot better than someone who might not have that experience. Have you ever thought about that call that you just mentioned, that because you're a mom as well, but also because of that very first interaction with, you know, with your son and the fire service, that interest that peaked and everything, all of that experience combined, do you ever think about the fact that that, you know, also helped, like that phone call that you took maybe was meant for you only because of all the experience that you had already building up to that call, that you were able to handle it probably a lot better than anybody else who might not have had that experience like you?
Actually, no, that has never occurred to me. But now that you're pointing it out, it is pretty amazing. I mean, before our conversations beforehand, we're talking about how things come in full circles, you
Mhm.
know. Um, it hadn't occurred to me, but I definitely feel like my life experiences have definitely equipped me to at least know whether or not I can do this type of work. And then it's up to me to take it from there to see, you know, choose that path. How am I going to be as a telecommunicator? How am I going to keep myself healthy? How am I still going to be there for my family and my friends and my coworkers and do the right thing? You know, so I think that it definitely, that instant or incident with my son definitely started a long chain of events. You're probably going to make me start thinking about all the other things that may have happened that, that I'll lead back to that. I'll be sitting here one day with a scratch pad and or my next thing that happens tomorrow and say, this is because of that thing that happened 20 years ago.
Well, it's always um you know, interesting to connect a lot of those dots, you know, going through. You know, I took a call once with a it was a girl who called in who was suicidal, and she was dealing with some back pain. Like the pain in her back and her neck were so severe that she didn't want to live anymore. And I remember I had a trainer years prior to this call, and I would observe him sometimes, when he was taking calls from suicidal callers, because he would completely connect with that person by just asking them little questions, which is, and the questions that I'm going to ask, some people would think, well, that's so easy. But when you're talking to someone who doesn't want to live anymore, you don't want to put their mind or have their mind going to different directions where they might, go ahead and do that while they're on the phone with you. But he would ask them, like, what's your favorite, band, or movie or whatever. And he would connect that way, and they would talk. They would just talk until EMS would get there and help would arrive. So in this situation, I did the same thing, because I myself was dealing with a bunch of issues with my back and my neck, and it was just horrible. And I was trying anything to get some sort of relief from this pain. I was having some issues with my sciatic nerve, so I started doing yoga, believe it or not. I started doing yoga, and just one session, I relieved almost all of that pain. And it was something that I continued to practice, and it helped me. So that's how I connected with this caller, where I used that past experience and talked to her about it and told her about what helped me. And before I knew it, EMS was there, and she had said thank you. And she said that she was going to look into doing yoga as well. So that's why I feel like, in a sense, that call was meant for me to take, because I had that experience, a similar experience that this person was dealing with, and I was able to help that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when people call 911, they don't just want you to send the field responders. They want to talk to somebody who they can connect with, and someone who cares, and sharing your experiences or using that as an avenue to connect with your callers humanizes you, and that's really important. So even in a world of protocols and things that are in place because it protects us, right, and it helps us provide a better level of service, it's always important that we don't lose the human aspect of that, because these callers need to know they're talking to a human who cares. And using those experiences really lets our empathy come out. And that's one of the things, that we're taught young in our 911 careers is empathy and sympathy. And sometimes it's harder than other times. It can be pretty challenging to bring that out, because what our caller is feeling as a trauma may not be something that personally that you would view as a trauma, but that doesn't matter. We find a way to connect, because that's why we do what we do. So it's important that the empathy and it just helps the call be more successful. It helps it go smoother. Obviously, this is not going to work on every single incident and every single call, but it does, I think, make the process less stressful for the caller and the call taker, both.
Right. Now, before you switched over to the position that you're at now, how many years were you in dispatch, and how far had you moved up in your center?
So I had been in dispatch for 15 years, and I was the deputy director when I had left. So I had started as a telecommunicator, and then went to alternate shift leader. Then I was shift leader. Then I was the quality improvement specialist. Then I was the operations manager, then the deputy director. So a lot of moving within the center. But even at the time I left, if they were busy or I had some downtime, I still wanted to throw on a headset and plug in and go out and take calls. And dispatching EMS scared me by the time I left. I was a really good, confident, dispatch in police, fire, EMS when I was out there. But man, you lose some of that stuff pretty quick if you're not out there using it. So call taking was a little safer for me. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. I remember being out there going, gosh, I really want to stay in 911. So in order for me to take this, emotionally, I'm going to have to get up and move off this floor. Some people can stay out there forever, and some people just don't have it in them. And after I got up and moved off the floor, I just missed it. And I looked back and went, geez, I thought that was stressful. Now look what I'm doing, so I just want to go back to taking some calls and dispatching and, doing what I started in this for, but yeah, 15 years. And I did all kinds of different positions during that time.
What were some of the reasons then that, or even one of the reasons that made you want to continue to move up and move up? Because there was so much that happened right in the beginning. You had this incident with your child. You end up getting interested in fire services. Then you've got this test. This competitiveness in you that you wanted to take up this challenge. You get the job. You continue on. You've got all these different calls and this experience build up. But what made you want to continue to move up and move up and move up and really, kind of make change for the center, but to also kind of molding that next generation that's coming in? Because as you said earlier, some of the stuff that you went through training, you wanted to make sure that others coming in, didn't experience some of those hardships. You wanted them to feel more comfortable. So, I mean, I guess was that part of the reason as well for moving up?
It was part of it. To be honest with you, it's still there's something inside me that feels like I could be doing more. How can I be doing more? I want to, it started out with how can I do more for my community and for the emergency services disciplines that I love. How can I do more? And that's where it led me to working in central dispatch. And then while I was in there, it became, well, how can I do more for my telecommunicators? How can I make this process better for them? Because there's a lot that they go through, and how can we give them better resources? How can we give them better tools? How can, so it just became, I just feel like there's always a need for me to do more. And that changed, that led me to keep going up into the different positions, because the higher up I got, obviously, the more that I could do. But it was important for me to really understand and experience all those levels. That every single position I've ever gotten has built off the previous ones that I have had. It changes you, no one starts out as a telecommunicator and is the same person that they were a year ago. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it changes you. And so all of those experiences kind of led to the next thing, and even led me to where I'm at today. I felt like I was doing great things where I was, and I worked with a fantastic group of people, and I missed my telecommunicators and my responders from my hometown. But I just felt like there was something more that I could do, even if I can't tell you what it is. It's just a feeling I have, and I just keep following that.
That's awesome. Now, you've made this transition. You are now the state 911 administrator for Michigan. So for those who are watching and listening, what does this position include? Like, what all is it that you're doing now? Because you've done all of this. You've wanted to make change. You wanted to do more, and this has always been in the center. But now, what you're doing, and you mentioned it in the beginning as well as we were talking about 911 Goes to Washington, where in the beginning, this first couple of years, or the first year rather, you're there, being part of your center, and then the next time you go, you're now doing this as the state administrator. So it's not just stuff that you're looking at for public safety, just there in the center in that community. Now you're doing stuff for public safety, but for the whole state. So what all is it that you do now, and the importance of this position?
Well, the first and foremost thing that I do now is learn. So I am a sponge. I am constantly learning about all kinds of things that I didn't know before, and learning about things that I knew enough about that they existed, but I really couldn't, be part of a conversation about them. So a lot of what I'm doing is learning. So, but I've got all kinds of great big ideas. I just need to know, I really need to get a grasp on the capabilities of Michigan, where we're at as far as the 911 industry goes, where we're at as a country with 911, before I can start putting a lot of those into motion. You know, I'd love to go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds, but that just isn't how it works. What I've really learned a lot is every time you move in a position in 911, it doesn't matter if you're going from a telecommunicator to a CTO to a supervisor, there's always something that is you're doing more than the position before you. So the farther up you go, the more you get away from the actual day-to-day operations. So it's not so much as taking and processing a call, but what's way behind the scenes of that? How is that call being delivered? What kind of information is it? Is it correct information? How quick are you getting that? What's your capabilities of locating that caller? You know, it's not necessarily the questions you ask or specifically how you service that one call. It's the entirety of how the industry works way behind the scenes. How are you getting your funding? How are you using that funding? Do the telecommunicators and the directors have the resources that they need? Is the 911 industry moving forward in Michigan and keeping up with the capabilities? And if it's not, how are we going to do that? And how are we going to pay for that? Answering a lot of day-to-day questions. You know, it would be hard for me to put down on paper everything that we're doing, but working a lot with Treasury for 911 surcharge disbursements and the Public Service Commission and the State 911 Committee on training requirements, you know, making sure that those are accurate and up to date and that the centers are providing those opportunities for their telecommunicators. We're just doing a whole lot of things, and I've got so many ideas. I know I feel bad for Jeff Troyer. He's our SNC chair, and he has to listen to some of the direction and the way that I want to go. But it's a pace yourself kind of deal. You know, we've got to do this in order to get that to do that. So a lot of learning. I've really got a lot to learn. I'll always be learning, though. I love to learn. I think that's a lot of why I am where I am. I love people. I love learning from people. While this virtual environment is fantastic as far as keeping everyone safe and connected with the way that things are, I'm with you. I miss that networking. I miss all of that because that's really where the connections are made. That's really where you are able to touch base with experts that you can follow up with later on. And I have so many things that I want to do. I don't know how to get there yet, but I'm going to keep working until I do.
That is awesome. And, you know, getting into this position as well, you know, for those who are watching and listening, you know, when we're talking about 911 and sharing these stories and all these different things, there's a whole other aspect of it that people don't know about or hear about it. And you just mentioned, you know, several of those pieces because, you know, like you were saying, you know, funding, you know, you would think there would be some easy answer or pathway or whichever to certain aspects of funding, whether it be for training or technology or whatever, but it's not. There's a lot to it. There's so much to it that it goes deep in there. And you know, I'm grateful that I was able to work for INdigital for the time that I did because I got to learn that whole other side as being an industry partner and how, you know, a 911 call actually works. That when you dial and it goes through it, you know, it happens like that. But there is so much that happens in between connecting all those pieces for that call to actually get there. And then if something goes south, that call is actually able to get to a different place because of that redundancy. And that's what you want, you know, in a call. You want the call to go somewhere, not just go off and just, you know, disappear or whichever. But so there's other aspects of that you know that you are you know, helping and trying to figure out as well. You know, you got NG911, you've got the network that's there and in Michigan, which, you know, is really good for what it is for the state to have to you know, send calls and everything. But that's that whole other piece that that people don't know about either. And in saying that, when you made your transition, was it anything like you expected because of you know, the types of calls and everything you were doing before? Now you're doing this other side.
I didn't really know what to expect,
Mhm.
but I have to tell you, the success of my transition is in due a huge part to the ladies in the state 911 office. I mean, I was lucky because I had a relationship with a few of them before I started in there. So fitting into that family and working with them definitely went exactly like I thought it would, and I hoped it would. They are probably one of, the greatest secrets of 911 in the state of Michigan is this fantastic group. So I'll have to give out a shout out to all my state 911 office ladies. But they really have made this to where I can take the time that I need to do to learn. I mean, the last year has obviously been putting out a lot of fires because it's just this, extraordinary year that we had, trying to do things that we could for the centers when it came to training needs and funding and, things that we could do to help them with that while everything was shutting down and just, just going crazy. But they have allowed me time to learn and ask questions, and they just have patience and grace. And I can say the same for the state 911 committee and the subcommittees. They never make me feel awkward or uncomfortable for asking questions. And the PSAP directors that have supported me into coming in here. There's a lot of them that I just have constant contact with, and I always will. You cannot succeed in any of these positions or to service an industry like this alone. You just can't do it. It takes a team to make it happen day to day, and then it takes a broad, vast expansion of experts. I am not an expert in all of these things, but I know a lot of them. So I know who to call when I have questions, who I can rely on, and they all, at the end of the day, all of us have the same goal, is to make 911 in Michigan a success. We want to keep the industry moving forward. We want to be reliable. We want people to feel comfortable calling on us. And we want to take care of our own. That's one of the other biggest things that I'm really trying to see how I can get the movement on, is taking care of those who are taking care of everyone else. Mm-hmm. That's really important to me.
Well, this has been awesome to finally get you on here and share your history, your experience, and what you're doing now. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode, looking back at your career from the start and going through dispatch and everything up until now, what are you most grateful for out of that, I guess, out of that time, dispatching?
A few things. I mean, number one, first and foremost, I'm grateful for the people I have met and have had the incredible pleasure of working with. Not just, it's from now in the state 911 office and with all of the people that I have the pleasure working with now, but also in the 911 center, my telecommunicators, and all of the field responders. You can't, don't underestimate the importance of having that relationship between your 911 dispatch and your field responders, and that understanding, because the better they understand each other's positions, the more successful their operations are going to be. And I really believed that, and that helped me a lot. And you want those folks to be there for you when you need their help or you make a mistake, and they can help you work through that. So probably the people in those relationships, and that's why I think the virtual has probably hurt me just emotionally a little bit, because I miss my people. I miss my friends. I miss the people that I have contact with in the 911 industry. Mm-hmm. And then also just the experience of it. It just makes me more grateful and thankful for everything that I have experienced, for everything that I have. It makes me remember that even if I'm down and I'm having a bad day or I make a mistake, that there are people out there that are really dealing with crisis. And, I'm someone who worked with just thousands of others who could help them through that. And that makes me feel good. And everybody who does this line of work, and you, Ricardo, for being there for us, giving us an outlet, which I'm going to talk to you about where I think you need to go next later offline, by the way. We're not getting out of that. But just, just how it makes you grow as a person, how it makes you feel. I won't say that you ever feel completely satisfied, at least for me, because like I said, I always want to do more. So I don't know what my next thing will be, but I'll use all of these experiences to take it with me. And I miss National Telecommunicators Week in the 911 centers. I miss the food and the fun and the themes and the pictures. And, happy Telecommunicators Week next week to all of our folks out there. I know it's not going to be the same kind of year once again that we wanted to celebrate, but hang in there. We can just do an telecommunicators. We can have food and laughs and fun for the heck of it after this is all done. So
that's excellent. Thank you so much for being on, for the job that you've always done here in public safety and what you're doing now. Thank you so much for everything. This has been awesome, like I said, to finally get you on here and learn more about you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Now, I will be right back here with you in just a moment. And for those who are watching, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is going to be @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode is sponsored by INdigital as well as Rapid Deploy. And this episode was an exclusive INdigital episode. This show will always be free, but if you're looking for any bonus content, the singing badly in my car that I was talking about earlier, and all kinds of bonus content, you can check us out, and that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone.